Louise, welcome to today's podcast. Good to see you today. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you, James. Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Very good. I'm into this year and rolling. So, yeah, I feel like we got through the 75 days that was January and we're well underway with February, so that's good.
It's always a tough month, isn't it, January? It's just
It is,
hard.
yeah.
As much as we try and be positive and be uplifting to our teams, it's still a grind, isn't it? And everyone knows that.
Every year. Yeah, it is. And you just want to get through it. And now, and we're rolling now. I feel like things are moving, probably more so in the US than the UK at the moment for me and our team, but nevertheless.
Is that the
yes.
Trump effect?
Build, baby, build. Yeah, sadly, yeah, it is a bit, and all the drilling. Yes, I think it does have that effect.
Yeah.
At what cost, I dread to think, but yeah,
It's madness, isn't it? It's almost like we're living in a parallel universe. But anyway, before we get into that and any conspiracy theories that we want to throw into the mix, it's good to get you on the podcast. And I guess we've got quite a few subjects to talk about in terms of topics, and I really want to delve into this contingent model because myself and BWD, we're sort of kindred spirits in terms of the contingent model doesn't work, but it seems that is the way that we work in recruitment, and I'm keen to understand why. But before we start to delve into that, what I'd really like to find out, and I never sort of found this out when we were dealing with you a few years ago, is your background. You know, how did you get into recruitment? What drew you into this wacky world?
Yeah, good question. So my mum had a recruitment agency growing up all those years ago, and in the summer holidays from about, I think I was about 12 when I first started going in and filing CVs in the holidays. And it just kind of grew a little bit from there in the holidays. Then she'd ask, can you answer the phones, or can you show, it was like a secretarial temps agency. Can you show the candidate to the interview room or put them on the typing test? And I just started doing more and more. And then when I kind of came back from all my travels and doing a whole load of wild things that you have to do, I think, at some point, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So she said, well, you can just come and help us. And I ended up being candidate controller, which I'm not sure about that job title now, that I was controlling people. But I then went and did loads of other stuff because I thought I'm not sure about whether I want to get sucked into recruitment, and I just ended up getting sucked into recruitment and never really managed to move away from it. So I joined a firm called Hudson, which was originally TMP Worldwide, and I was formally trained by them. I mean, my mum's was brilliant, but that was kind of fast-paced, high volume, low level, and Hudson had a HR practice that I then started to learn kind of permanent direct hire. And did really well there and really enjoyed it. And then gradually moved into engineering and ended up being sent overseas. I was sent over to the States. I did several years in Houston in engineering, looking after the ExxonMobil accounts, and then sort of landed back in Europe and in the perm team of a very big recruitment firm, Air Swift. And yeah, it was an interesting time because they were going through a transaction, and it was quite a big firm, and they were looking at merging or selling. And the contract side of the business had been valued really highly. It was very, very valuable. But the perm side of the business, or direct hire for those in the US, had been valued really low. And the reason was because the forecasts were so inaccurate against the actuals, and it was all contingent. And so I ended up with another guy getting tasked with sorting that out and shoring up, as they called it, revenue. And that was when I first got introduced to a different way of working.
Okay.
So that's the story. And up to that point, shall I kind of carry on and explain?
So were you working on a contingent sort of traditional model?
All the stuff that I'd done previously had either been contract or contingent. I'd had no exposure to retained at all. I had no idea what it was. I think I had this perception that it was something executive that I was never going to be able to do, basically, and that it was for, very well dressed, pinstripe suit type London city people, and I wasn't really that. I didn't really fit that mold. The mold I did fit though, is I was really driven to do a good job. Like I've always been brought up to believe that if you're going to do something, then do it properly. Like, don't half-ass stuff. And I was getting to the stage where I was really frustrated with what I was doing, because I was good at what I did. You know, by then I was, 13 years in, and I'd got good at, I understood the industry, and I knew what, all the different disciplines of engineering, and I could carry out really thorough searches, and I was good at consulting with clients and candidates. And I was a really good, I was fairly decent contingent recruiter. I was a good biller, like high biller. But I'd work on so many things that just wouldn't come to fruition for whatever reason, Excuse me, they would, the client would change the goalposts, or not my fault, but stuff would just happen. And I think, God, I put so much time and effort into that. And by this time, excuse me, James, sorry. I was a single parent, and the time that I had just became so precious, and I'd get so upset that I'd spend so much time working on stuff, and that time I could be spending with the kids, because it wasn't actually making any money. And I actually got to the stage where I thought, I'm going to leave the industry, because I'm so frustrated and demoralized by this amount of work that I do that doesn't, produce anything. And then when we got tasked with this project of kind of most money soonest, as it was called, or shoring up revenue, the guy that I got kind of put with on that project, Matt Howell, had some experience of retained. And he was like, this is what we need to do. We need to get financial commitment from the clients, and that will shore up the forecasts. And he kind of showed me what he meant, and he'd done a bit of it at his previous firm. And we started converting the contingent work in the practice in the UK, in the contingent business in the UK, to retained. And I was like, oh my God, this is just not, why didn't someone show me how to do this at the bloody start? And why doesn't everybody work like this? It's so much better. You get the commitment, you can then put a process in, you can make sure that you do the job properly because everyone's committed to it, and then you can make sure that you reach a result. I mean, there was a lot then that I didn't know that I now know, right? And we didn't get it. It wasn't perfect, and we didn't get it all right. And in some situations we were taking money up front, and then the delivery wasn't where it should be. And we did experience some problems with the delivery, which I now know why, and I know what we should have done. But it was all just a learning journey. And I just started looking around and like, why isn't everybody doing this? The clients are having a better experience. We're having generally a much better experience. The candidates are even having a better experience. And the outcome is like at least 3 times better. Our fill rates went from like 15% to like 75%. And I don't understand why everybody isn't doing this. And so the firm that I was working for said, like, can you roll this out now? We'd done it in the UK, and can you teach the rest of the contingent team how to do it? Or we actually ended up setting a model up where we had a BD team that won the retainers, and then a kind of delivery team, and the contingent team then delivered them to begin with. Now it's fully retained, and for the most part, it's kind of you win and deliver. You kind of you're still 360 in that respect. But there was lots of areas of the business overseas, the US, APAC, and so on, that hadn't it had sight of it. I couldn't travel, but between us, basically, Matt and I, rolled it out across the business. And the last time I caught up with the chairman of that firm, they did $12 million in retained revenue that year. So it's all retained. It's all retained now. It's gone from.
So they've shifted the model completely.
Completely. Yeah. It just didn't make sense to carry on working the contingent model. It wasn't building value in the business. It wasn't producing consistently good results, and everybody preferred it. So, it all moved.
So when did Retrained come about then? What was the trigger point for that?
Yeah, so the transaction that happened was a bit bumpy, and I didn't have a very good experience through it, so I left. And thinking about what I wanted to do then, I was like, I want to know more about this retained piece. Like, there was lots I didn't know. Matt, as brilliant as he was kind of self-taught, and so was I. And I didn't really know what was under the hood of an executive search firm, or there was a lot I knew that I didn't know. So I kind of set out to go and work for those types of firms and go and find out. I tried to go and work for one of the Shrek firms, Spencer Stewart or a Heidrick, but they wouldn't let me in because I don't have a degree.
Oh, seriously?
So I was a bit sad about that.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah, I was a bit sad about that. So you either have to have like 5, they grow their own researchers, so they spend 5 to 7 years as associates and then senior associates, or you have a degree, or you come from industry, or normally both. And I didn't have either of those things. I wasn't coming from, financial services or law, or, I wasn't a head of a CPO or a head of engineering.
How did you take that rejection? Because you've been a successful biller anyway, so you've transitioned, so you've got proof, and then you can't get in because you don't have a degree, which I find now quite amusing.
Yeah, I don't know whether, I think it is still the same. I think they're quite traditional. I think it's quite traditional. You either grow, and even it's quite hard to get the job as the researcher at the very bottom if you don't have a degree. I think it's just a sort of easy filter, blanket filter. So, yeah, no, Steve Jobs was brilliant, and I know he wasn't perfect. None of us are, but his speech was at Stanford University. He says you can join the dots looking backwards, but you can't join the dots looking forward. And to me, that felt like, oh my God, how am I going to understand this industry, this area of my new career properly if I can't go and work for one of them? And I felt like that was a bit of potentially a roadblock. But now looking back, I'm glad that I didn't, because what I did instead was go and experience some smaller challenger firms that weren't as big as the Shreks, but they were disruptive and they were doing things a bit differently. One of them was a professional research firm that do talent mapping and talent pipelining and insight studies, one of the world's leading professional research firms in the industry. And that was fascinating, absolutely fascinating. The idea of charging tens of thousands of pounds for a project that there's no ultimate hire for, it's a piece of mapping or a piece of succession pipelining or an insight study. Like, that was a whole new world that was incredible to experience. And the kind of real executive search that I didn't really know what proper assessment looked like, or, what a real executive search process should look like and why, and what the component parts are of that to make sure that you are bringing the client to the best outcome that's available to them in the market at this time. And this whole concept of not committing to fill, which was a whole new thing for me, because everything we'd sold had been on the basis that you make this financial commitment and in return we'll commit to fill it. And that, of course, isn't what executive search is. It's and true retained search is. So yeah, I learned a whole load of stuff at anyway, what happened after I kind of had those two experiences was I wasn't sure what to do next. Somebody called me from the first firm and said, listen, I've joined this company. It would happen to be a firm in compliance and risk, very technical, very interesting, but it was all contingent. And he said it needs to be retained, because he'd had been kind of somebody that I'd helped and coached back at Swift. Will you come and work for us and, turn it retained? I didn't really want to commit to anything, be an employee again. I think I'd been through the mill a few times. So I said, well, I'll just help. I'll come in and help and do some, just do a few sessions with you. And it worked. And they started winning retainers and started converting their work to retained. And someone else heard about what I'd done for them. And a mate of his phoned me and said, listen, can you come and do that for us? Because we need to win some retained work. And it's just grown arms and legs. And I was due to go out and do a team for a firm that I'd done their UK, and I was due to go and get on the plane and do their US team and teach them how to win retainers. And then COVID hit, and I literally I wasn't allowed to get on the plane. It was like 2 days later. We weren't allowed to go. And they said, well, would you record some videos for us to watch? And I thought, there you go. Yeah, that's a good idea. So I basically then in the first half of COVID recorded what is now and what was the kind of bootstrap version then of the course that that's now, we're now on version 2, and it's basically exactly what I've kind of been teaching all along, but all the stuff that I've learned along the way, and we've continued to adapt it and amend it and improve it, and now it's a community and a course and a program and coaching, and all kind of rolled into one that helps people make the transition.
Has it been plain sailing? Because I would have imagined it would have been quite at the start, because you talk to recruiters, and how many times you hear this, in my market that doesn't work. So I'm sure you've had that a million times.
Yeah, every excuse under the sun, every excuse, like it won't work in my location, it won't work in my industry, it won't work for my clients will never buy it, or it doesn't work anyway, it's a load of rubbish, and you just take money up front, and load of smoke and mirrors, and it's actually no different to contingent. And all those preconceptions and misconceptions that are the barriers to people doing it, really. And if you look at why don't more recruiters work on a retained basis, those are the reasons, because they've got those misconceptions and they've got those preconceptions that I had. I thought it was something just for executive positions, for pinstripes down in London, and that was not the case. But that was my misconception, and that had prevented me from exploring the possibility or seeking out how I could move in that direction. So it has not been plain sailing at all, no.
And so with Retrained, there's a team now, so you've grown a team, which is really good to see. What can somebody expect if they were to join one of your courses? What are the outcomes? What can they expect?
People surprise themselves, really. Every day in the community, there's people posting saying, "Oh my God, I've just won my first retainer. I'm only 2 weeks into the course. Like, I can't believe it." And all they've done is just follow what we tell them to do, and with the confidence and the encouragement we give them. So, people, I think, are surprised by how much they get and how well and how quickly it works if they relax into it. And, we do a lot of work around, don't worry about this, and don't, come in at it thinking, "Oh, this will never work." And we give them lots of information to show them that all they need to do is just put these things in, follow these steps, and then it'll work. And then lo and behold, it does. So I was on a call with a guy yesterday who said, what is he now? I think he's like 7-8 months in. And he said, today marks the day that we've closed $1 million of retained work since we started this course just under 8 months ago. Mm-hmm. And so what to expect, like anything from winning your first retainer in the first couple of weeks to closing $1 million worth of retained business, and anything in between, but everything you need to help you make that transition, from the support and the encouragement, because a lot of it's confidence. An awful lot of this is the confidence, as you know. But that is driven by the tools and the understanding of what it is, a lack of understanding and knowledge of what you should be doing. That's where there's the lack of confidence. Once you understand, okay, so those are the component parts. That's what it is. That's why clients buy it. That's the situation in which they're likely to. And here are all the tools and word tracks and pieces of information that I need to share at each stage to help them understand that. And then the confidence starts to grow. And so those things hand in hand, really, is what they...
It's a belief system. That's what we found. You need to have a belief system in what you're doing with your service offering. Will actually provide the client and the candidate the best outcome. But if you don't believe it, then you struggle to. And I think we've been on this transition for a while now, but that belief system now is starting to run through the business. But it's difficult for recruiters, because it's like, well, if I don't win this, and do I walk away? And if I walk away, I'm losing. Somebody else is going to fill it. So they've got this internal dialogue all the time about the fear of not winning it, fear of not believing it, fear of the client doesn't like it, it's not my market. And there was one thing I noticed, what you said in one of your videos, that this contingent model, and I have no idea how we've ended up here, the way that we work as recruiters, it does affect recruiters' mental health. You know, and I'm pretty old school with regards to building resilience, and you've just got to get up and go. But as you said at the start of this, you know, working with clients and being frustrated that you're doing a good job, and that commitment doesn't sort of, you know, come through in terms of, you know, the financial rewards or even just the success of helping people. I honestly think it's madness. I really do, that we've ended up in this cycle of just almost a continuing battle of what we're trying to do. So my question is, how have we ended up in this? How have we got to this? Like, you know, recruitment's been going years. I don't know how many years, because nobody really knows how it started. There's all anecdotes like recruitment. But how have we ended up that this contingent model seems to be, for the main, the go-to model in 2025?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the first thing that I think there's several reasons. I think, you know, how did it start and why did it start that way? I mean, God knows, I don't know. Did it start with, you know, crashing jobs? Did it start with, you know, people kind of muscling their way into helping firms hire, and therefore that's very low risk, you know, I'll send you someone, and so possibly. Why has it continued to prevail? I think probably for me, there's probably a couple of reasons. One is, and, you know, as awful as this sounds, I find that it's a bit like a drug. Like, for both parties, for the clients and the consultants, you know, recruiters, because it's very hard not to get sucked back into, as you said, doing the same thing again. Because there's this perception that if you don't send some CVs, right, for free, if you don't send some CVs for free, then you're missing out. And that's a really good point that you just made. But when you actually look at it statistically, what you're missing out on is an 80% chance of working on something that does not result in a fee. That's what you're missing out on. You're missing out on an 80% chance of spending your time and completely wasting it.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
And then, but people don't realize that. They think there's this perception that they're going to make a fee, and if they don't send CVs for free, then they're going to be missing out on it. And so that's why it's so easy to go, well, I'll just send some CVs, and then of course you're in a contingent relationship where you're just sending CVs for free. And it's the same on the client side. They've got this perception that they just get some CVs and then they'll fill the position. But the reality is that if they look back at all the positions that they've done that on, that they've just got some CVs, and I'm not talking about low level, high volume, you know, warehouse workers, or you know, where the talent is plentiful and the barrier to entry is low, and you can just put an advert on and filter a few CVs. I'm talking about the stuff that we get involved with, which is mid to senior staff, or you know, where it isn't low level, straightforward, easy to fill stuff, which in this market is a lot of stuff, right? They have this perception that they can just get some CVs for free and they're going to fill it. But if you take them back, and if they actually look at how long it's taken them to do that, how much time they might have got CVs on day one or even day two, but then they weren't quite right, or then they interviewed a few and they weren't quite right, or they turned down the offers. And when you actually look at the time that they've invested in it, and the amount of CVs, and the amount of time they've taken to liaise with agencies, and actually the overall time to fill, it's dreadful. So they tend to have this perception that putting a retained process in place, or putting any kind of more rigorous process in place, is going to take longer. But it's an absolute total, and be more expensive. It's an absolute misnomer. It's exactly the opposite. And actually, if you set it up for success in the first instance, it's quicker, it's cleaner, it's more effective, and it's much, much, much more affordable, and overall a better experience for everybody. But there's a lot of misconceptions. So that's the first reason that I think clients are just still sucked into, because the hit of just getting CVs straight away, or the hit for the recruiter is just sending CVs straight away. It's so easy to just do that and think that that's going to solve the problem. The other reason is that I couldn't believe, and I still find it really hard to believe, why there aren't more people that teaching contingent recruiters. You know, why don't, when we get born into recruitment, why aren't we taught this methodology straight away? And I couldn't believe that. And when Jamie first called me and said, "Hey, I'm working for this firm, will you come and, I'm like, surely there's somebody out there that's better qualified than me to do that. I'm not a trainer. I've just learned myself through my own doing, and I don't intend to kind of become a trainer." And he's like, "Well, no, we've looked everywhere, and I don't know anybody better placed to do it than you. You taught me how to do it." And I found that really hard to believe. I never wanted to set my own business up. Both my parents had their own businesses. I did not want to work for myself. I saw how much time and effort and energy, and how little me and my brother saw of them because of it. And I swore I'd never do that to my kids, and yet here I am, because nobody else is doing it.
Oh, there you go.
And people need to know, because they don't need to work on a contingent basis. It isn't that difficult. Yes, we need a change of mindset. Yes, there needs to be a change in belief system, but I've done it enough times now to know that it can be done. And no matter what industry you're in, even if your perception is your clients won't buy it, or your market won't be receptive to it, they will be, and they will. So I've kind of ended up going, oh, okay, looking around, nobody else is doing this, so I'm going to do it. And the reason, moving on to the second point, is I think that, we're still stuck in this contingent model. Is lots of people, or more and more people, if I've got anything to do with it, move away from that contingent model, but not many people come back. Yeah, so there aren't actually many people coming back to say, right, sleeves up, this is how you do it, They're just like, learning more about retain and moving away from it. The other and sort of final point is, as I said before about my experience of working for some of these very sophisticated and executive firms, they don't let people like us in. They generally don't take recruitment to search. They won't take an experienced contingent recruiter that hasn't had a, red brick university upbringing and a research background. Generally, they'll either take people from industry, or they'll grow their own, Oxbridge grads. And so we don't get access to what they do. We don't get to see what they do. And therefore, we can't bring that learning back. And neither would we want to, because once we go that way, we're probably not going to come back. So there's always been this quite big divide between what they do, and it's been behind those kind of closed doors.
But that creates a gap though, doesn't it? There's an opportunity there, because obviously you've got your Shrek firms, and then there's a market opportunity to provide what we perceive to be a very similar service with some great outcomes. But it isn't just the preserve of the C-suite. Because if you go through an executive search process to find that C-suite person, that's fine. But any other piece of recruitment then is just going to be on a contingent basis. So what you're potentially getting is suboptimal results. So you get one person who's defined for the role, brilliant, and then their functional leaders are on however they find them through contingent methods, and then their teams. So what you've actually built isn't the best business. And that to me is a strange perverseness, because you can apply the same methodology within different levels, because as a business owner, you want the best people. So why not work with a partner to do that? That, again,
absolutely
is another weird constraint that we seem to be in this model, where we did a client survey, Louise, and we spoke to our clients, and we said they were obviously rating our service, and we got some really interesting thoughts and comments. But we also said, what traits do you not like to see in recruitment? And it was the standard things, too many CVs being sent to us, too many recruiters. And I'm like, well, you have the power to change it as well. So work with us to change it.
But they don't know. They don't know that there's another option.
Is it that... Sometimes I think, is it that they don't know, or is it something as in they don't want to challenge the status quo? They've accepted it. It's like, that's what it is.
Well,
so do we need to educate more and say there is another way where you can get far better outcomes and you'll get a better experience. your candidates will get a bit of experience, and it's a partnership to solve a problem. So why can't we work, you know, and it's not even necessarily about costing even more. It's just sometimes I look at some clients, and I did a video saying, you know, contingent recruitment is broken. And I got so many senior people within the industry that I recruit for send me a personal message and go, yeah, brilliant, nice one. Needed to be said.
Good.
When it came to talent teams, HR, less receptive. It was like, okay, so we've got a disconnect. So I do think we need to sort of win hearts and minds and educate people that there's another way.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So there's so much that I'd love to share on that. Like, it makes me think of two examples. The first example is we had a student come on our program. She was a head of HR or head or CHRO, I forget exactly, director, senior of a very big global talent acquisition team for one of the big tech firms. And she'd been hired by one of the leading recruitment agencies in their space. And they were delighted to have made the hire, and she was joining their team. They were just about to embark on our training course because all of their work was contingent, and they knew they wanted to go retain. So she ended up being a member of one of the cohorts that was going through the program. We ask you at the beginning of the program, like, why are you doing this? What, tell me why you're here. What do you want to achieve? And she said, I don't. I can't think of anything worse than learning how to sell retainers. I'm only here because the firm that I've just joined have told me I've got to be here. So that's how it started, right? And we nearly kind of said, like, respectfully, but we don't think this is right for you, because if you don't want to do it, then, what have we got to work with? But we didn't, and we persevered. And as I said before, we're quite good at changing mindsets in the early part of the program, because that is what the foundation of it all is all about. And we got partway through the journey with her. I think she was about 4 or 5 weeks in, and she just said, it was one of the pitch coaching sessions, and she just stopped and she did her piece, which was actually very, very good. And she said, I just want to take a moment to apologise. I think I misjudged and was ill-informed before I started the program.
Slightly, yeah.
And let me just say that I've shut every single recruiter down that's ever pitched a retainer to me in the 15 years that I've been in talent acquisition. And because nobody has ever explained it to me like this. She's now a testimonial on the website. She's one of, if not the biggest retained biller in that firm now. And she was a head of HR. And nobody had explained it to her in such a way that she understood it and wanted to buy it. So if she didn't understand it and hadn't had it properly explained to her, then, you can bet that not many other people have. So yes, I absolutely believe it's our job to educate clearly and concisely what we want to do, why we want to do it, and dispel these misnomers and these myths and these misconceptions that the clients have about what retained is. Another example, if you'll allow me to
go for it.
Share. Yeah, cool. Is actually, I don't know whether he'll be cross with me for sharing it with you, but it's actually my brother. So my brother is very senior, very experienced in recruitment. He runs a very successful firm in the Middle East, and he's been in recruitment like me pretty much all his career. Like me, was kind of sucked in by my mum's agency, and has been very, very successful, and is very, very good at what he does. He called me only a couple of weeks ago and said, oh God, I'm so frustrated. So what's the matter? He goes, I can't hire the people that I want to hire. Like, it's really hard. And then this is recruiters. I'm not getting enough candidates through. I had a floor. I've got 5. We're going through a massive growth. We've just won a massive contract. We're going through a massive growth phase. It's such an exciting time to be in the business. I need to hire 5 straight away, first quarter of this year, experienced recruiters. These are contract recruiters. And I just can't. I've seen people, I've interviewed. There was a flurry of activity with agencies. I said, okay, how are you doing it? Well, we've got 5 different agencies working on it, and I've briefed everybody.
The irony.
I just don't know what more I can do. And I'm going, Ian, really? Seriously? Are you really asking me this question? Like, what should you do? You've put it out to 5 agencies contingency. You've seen a flurry of activity and then it's dried up. And the candidates now are kind of not coming through, or they're not very well. Nobody seems to be bothered about helping you with it. He's like, yeah. What do I do? I said, Ian, you pick the best one and you retain them. And he was like, but we don't pay retainers.
Oh my God.
I was like, okay, right.
I don't,
Just give it a go. Just give it a go, right? Pick one, retain them, give them a good brief. And he's like, oh my God, I don't think they've ever worked retained before. I said, so how happy would they be to take a retainer from you? And how much harder would they work for you if you actually gave them the commitment that they are going to fill every single one of those positions and it's all theirs? He'd be like, oh my God, they'd go mad on it. I said, okay, there you go. He's like 3 hires in now. Yeah, okay, I'm all sorted. But if he didn't know that that was the solution and he's in our industry, then yes, definitely there's a massive education piece still. And I go on and on and on about it, as people know, on LinkedIn and on our masterclasses. And I'm so passionate about helping people understand that it is possible, that it is a better way and it isn't that difficult. And it's just an education. And once you, as you know, yourself, James, once you come out the other side of it and your belief system is ingrained, you can't understand why anybody would want to do it any other way or why we've ended up in this mess in the first place. So yeah,
you won't go back. You don't want to go back to an uncommitted relationship.
No, absolutely not. No, like that's why people go that way and why nobody comes back. The only reason that people come back is, and we're doing a masterclass on this very soon actually, is if they don't actually get fully there. So a lot of people get to the stage where they're like, oh, they're kind of chancing it with, well, just give me a bit of money up front and I'll fill it for you. And they're not actually doing anything different. They haven't amended their process to mitigate the risk of all the things that could go wrong. And they actually end up in a bit of a halfway house, which can be worse than being contingent, because you've got money up front. You then haven't got a process you can rely on. You then, the delivery falls over, the client disappears on holiday partway through or stops responding, or they change the brief, and then you're like, oh my God. And it can either goes on and on and on and on and on, and then you just hemorrhage profit and it's not profitable, or you can't fill it because, you've washed through all the talent pool and they just want to see more. And then you think, I don't know whether I want to take a retainer on the next one because I'm not sure whether that's going to happen. And then people kind of retreat back to contingent. So that's where a lot of people need not much help, but just those extra pieces of the puzzle, which they don't know. They wouldn't know because they've never worked for a retained search firm. And how can we possibly do something when we've never, been taught how to do it? And a lot of people beat themselves up and like, we haven't managed to get there. I'm like, okay, well, how would you be able to? You don't know this stuff. You haven't worked for these firms. So relax. Like, let me just give you or somebody give you the rest of these pieces, and then you'll get to the other side, and then you won't go back. Yeah. So yeah, that's the only instance that I see people kind of going a little bit and then kind of panicking and going back to where they came from.
Yeah. It is a process. And I think the retained search is a process as well that we need to follow for the best outcome anyway. It's not a guarantee. We can guarantee you the best shortlist and the best people, but and I think sometimes our language as recruiters doesn't help. We want some money up front. I hear that a lot. And you think, listen it from a client's perspective, I want some money up front.
Yeah, totally.
My view is understand what the problems are. I always say this. It's never politically correct, but I always say, you need to have some foreplay. You can't just go straight in.
That is politically correct.
When you run your own business, you can say these things, can't you?
You can say whatever you like.
Yeah. HR, fine. But the meaning behind that is get to know them, build the relationship. Yeah. What's the problem? What's the challenge? What's worked? What hasn't worked? And then you're in a position to really understand how you can support them, rather than you hear about a job and say, well, I need some money up front. Again, I think as recruiters, we need to do more to educate them.
Absolutely.
But learn the language.
Yeah, language is a huge part. I mean, in the same for exactly the same reasons, I quite often use the analogy of having a builder come and quote an extension. Let's say he has a look at it and he says, after a lot of huffing and puffing and intakes of breath, as they always do, exactly. They then say, well, okay, it's going to be about 40,000, let's say, for the extension, all done. And we're going to need 15,000 of that up front. Like, you've never met this builder. He's never done anything for you before. How confident are you going to be about giving him 15 grand up front, and then does he come back? Or whereas if he says, it's going to be 40,000 and 15,000 of that is going to be due on commencement of work. Like, in your mind, those two different explanations, they're the same thing, but the language is different in that the perception is then that he's on site with his tools, and that's when you give him the money, when he's commencing the work, not up front, which kind of seems like there's going to be some sort of delay. So for that reason, I really don't like the word up front. And the only time that I use the word up front is when I'm explaining to contingent recruiters that retained isn't just money up front. But I never use that word. And there's so many words like even recruitment, that we shift to search, or placement, which is a very transactional contingent word where the recruiter makes a placement, we change to a hire. They make a hire, so they put themselves on the same side as the table as the client and say, these are the firms that we've successfully helped to hire. Or make appointments, which puts you in the bracket of an executive search consultant. So little language like placements or vacancies becomes, for low-level contingency, transactional recruitment, and positions is actually the word that clients tend to use, or appointments or mandates or projects or assignments as the search firms use. So yes, there's a language shift as well, for sure.
And are you seeing the market growing because you've been doing this for a number of years now, so are you seeing the trends where people want to do more of this because they've come to the natural conclusion, like many of us, that contingent isn't working? So is it a growing market?
Yeah. I mean, so I don't know, how best to illustrate that other than maybe our business. We have gone from me to now a team of 7 full-time with a wider kind of support team of, there's probably 10, including, contractors that help teach. Some are past students that have converted to retained and are now coaches. There's several of those. And some are, marketing help and support. But so our business is almost 15 times the size as it was in revenue 4 years ago.
That's fantastic. So it's a growing market, and obviously you're doing a great job, waxing lyrical about the benefits of retain. If someone's joining your cohort or community, how long roughly does it take for that individual, assuming that they are not like that talent HR lady?
Well, she got there negative. Anyway,
a little bit. A tough start, that one, tough gig. How long will it take before someone is converting more retained work or winning more retained work? Is there a sort of standard timeline?
Pretty much straight away, really. Within the first couple of weeks, the pennies start to drop, the mindset, because that's what we do first, the mindset starts to shift and the language starts to change and the perception of what we're doing here starts to change and the understanding of what and why. And the confident people then just start having a go and start explaining to clients what they want to do and why. And they haven't got the whole toolkit yet. They haven't, they're not the finished article, but there's two different types. Well, there's several different types of people that we work with. Especially in, our industry. And it's those that will just hear something and go, oh, okay, I'm just going to give it a go. And they just launch straight in and they don't know everything, but they'll just have a go. And those people tend to get results and start to see a change very quickly. First week, first couple of weeks. There are some that are more cautious and want to have all of their ducks in a row and want to know everything, and they kind of want to go almost all the way through it and go, right, okay. And they want to perfect every little bit and get all the paperwork aligned and all that kind of stuff before they'll then have a go. So that might take 2 or 3 months for them to be able to do that and then take it out to their clients. But that generally is the barometer of how quickly people get results. It's how quickly they want to and how quickly they give it a go.
Yeah, go for it. And with regards to different geographies, you obviously train recruiters in different areas or specialize in different, areas and different geographies. Are some countries further ahead with regards to their perception of retained?
Yes, yeah, it's funny. So the UK is one of the most advanced in terms of retained work.
Right.
Closely followed by Europe, so France and Germany, probably similar level. In fact, when I first started working on a retained basis, the first probably 6 to 12 months of projects that I won was across France, Germany, Netherlands, and that they do have a good practice of retain until all the UK recruiters started flooding it with contingent, and then it went backwards a bit. It is on about a par. The US, it's quite common too, but there's a lot of the contained, retingent type deposit engaged model, which isn't quite retained. And by that, I mean, still the vast majority of the fee is contingent upon making the placement. So there's only sometimes in a lot of cases, a few $1,000s on the start, which isn't contingent upon making the placement, and the large portion of it. Whereas you look at a model that, you and I might use, which is more like probably a third, where 2/3 of the fee is retained, is not contingent upon making the placement, and it's still just that. And then you look at the Shreks, and actually all of their fee is retained, so no part of their fee is contingent upon making the placement. They've billed all of their fee after 60 days, regardless of whether a candidate has even been interviewed. So there are different levels. There isn't just one, as you've quite rightly pointed out, there isn't just a one size fits all. The executive search model isn't a fit for our mid-senior level stuff. It's there's a halfway house in between where we've adapted it nicely to suit the level of the position, and quite rightly you agree, we used to call it the marzipan level, is below the icing sugar but above the
marzipan,
the volume of the cake.
Absolutely,
it's nice, and that we've adjusted a model that suits that mid-senior level. Australia is much further behind, so Australia is probably where the UK was about 4 years ago. It's quite uncommon. New Zealand too, and retained is like, oh really, we can do this, oh okay, cool. Whereas in the UK it's like, yeah, we know we can, but we're still kind of either stuck between this halfway house of trying it and not being very successful with it, or going, no, someone else is going to do it and we're going to sell on contingent against retained, which a lot of the UK firms do, sadly, and don't have a brilliant time of doing it. Where else have we got? Japan. Oh my God, Japan's such an exciting market. So we've been having like floods of inquiries from Japan. We've trained quite a few teams and individuals over there now, and it works so brilliantly well because it's such a difficult market, where candidates are short and they don't, they're scarce and they don't move very often. The contingent model just falls over all the time there, and that's where retained, of course, comes into its own. So yeah, Japan is on the journey too, but much further behind.
Okay, so there's a raft of countries there to get involved in. It's good, And if I just turn our attention now to future gazing, looking to the future, which is always interesting. We're hearing lots of game-changing tech, AI. It's going to change everything. Not a week goes by when somebody doesn't phone me up with something. It's going to be a game changer. It's like, I've heard that so many times. Do you, if you look at your crystal ball, what does the future look like with regards to just general recruitment? How's it going to change?
I mean, I wish I had a crystal ball. So technology is advancing rapidly, and there's no doubt about that. The fact that it's advancing so rapidly and that because of that, skills in almost every industry in a lot of areas are scarce. The contingent model will continue to fall short of client needs and expectations, and those kind of spray and pray sending CV approaches will continue to perform below par, below client expectations. And technology in the recruitment industry, as that's advancing at pace as well, will continue to handle the kind of low, the low level, high volume. We'll just get better at handling that. So the firms that are reliant on contingent work will have to start to look at either getting swallowed up by AI and becoming very lean on labour and just being tech firms, really. And the firms who are focused on solving more complex challenges that the AI and robots can't, and needs that higher touch headhunting approach, will need to move to a model where they are getting some financial commitment from their clients, because they won't be able to deliver results without it.
Yeah.
So I see a world where those two things are getting more and more prevalent, that the retained model gets more and more prevalent and globally, and AI looks after the low level, high volume, low margin stuff that the contingent model will get eaten up by. So, and we see that every day with our growing revenues and our growing team and the people that want to make a move to retained. We have hundreds of inquiries every week, and our sales guys' diaries are booked, slammed with people wanting to do it, and our coaching calendars are full, which is why we're continually hiring. We just took a new hire on, Samara. Welcome to the team last week.
That's excellent. And I think, look, competition is good, and my preference would be to compete with my competitors in a pitch.
Yes,
rather
exactly.
than 10 of us on a call listening to a job that we know we're not going to say anything of value apart from what's the culture like. We don't do that anymore. We've avoided that. But I would prefer a client to say, we want you to come out and see us and prepare a pitch based on these, this role or these opportunities. That will be my preference. And I think it'd be a better outcome, because I think that will be better for the client as well, because they're choosing a partner who they feel is going to be the right one for them. So we'll see how the future pans out. Anyways, one final question then, Louise. Sure. Right. This is my magic wand question. Okay. I'll give my magic wand question to everybody. So I'm going to give you a magic wand, and you can make only one wish with this magic wand. Just one wish, and you can't wish for 3 others, by the way. And it could be anything. What would you wish for and why?
I just want people to stop fighting. Just war. That bothers me a lot. Yeah, that bothers me. So probably a bigger answer than it's not recruitment industry related, but it's so sad and so pointless. And egos that mean egos, religion, posturing. I just want that to stop. I just want the fighting to stop.
It's a good wish. That's a good wish.
Yeah.
Louise, thank you very much for joining me on today's podcast. I've learned more. And how can people find you? Should they be interested in Retrain and the courses that you offer?
Yeah, of course. We're on LinkedIn a lot, Louise Archer, and the website is pretty informative. We do loads of free masterclasses and give loads of resources away, and that is retrainedsearch.com.
Brilliant. Keep flying the flag.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's been really lovely to talk to you.
Thanks, Louise.
Thanks, James.
Cheers.